There are so many people to acknowledge and thank that it is quite a daunting task actually, so I'll ask you to forgive me if there's some person or detail that I don't cover. This is such a big club that does so many things that it is quite, as I say, a daunting task to summarise it and to summarise the contribution of all the people in just a few minutes. Firstly though, I would like to acknowledge all of the past presidents and the previous boards of this club who have been custodians of it for now 89 years. I'd like to particularly acknowledge past President Brian Harris and his predecessor Tony Robbins, both of whom I've worked very closely with over the last 2 years, and to thank them and their predecessors for handing the club on, if I may put it that way, in such good shape. I'd also like to thank Governor Scarce for, first of all, for being here today, but more than that, for being a fantastic supporter of this club over the entire period of his tenure as governor. He is, of course, an honorary member of the club, but he goes beyond that, I may say, and goes out of his way to attend these biannual functions, the Christmas function and the Changeover, and we very much appreciate it, sir. Likewise, the Lord Mayor of Adelaide, Stephen Yarwood, who is another honorary member and in fact has a separate Rotarian life in his own right, being a Rotarian and I think a Paul Harris fellow. No, not a Paul Harris fellow, but anyway, a long-standing Rotarian. Not yet. Lord Mayor, we very much appreciate your contribution to the club, your attendance here today, and it's long been an ambition of mine that our club should get somewhat closer to the City Fathers, to use an old expression, and I think, in fact I know we've achieved that today, this year. There's more to be done, but we are in a joint venture on a couple of projects in the homeless youth area, and I and the entire board, and I know I speak to for President-elect Frank when I say that we're delighted with that, and we wish it to continue for many years. Thank you. I'd like to thank personally Marie Dorrington, not just for her stewardship of the district over the past 12 months, but for her friendship. We've become good friends over the last year and a half or so, for her counsel and just for being there for me, for the club, whenever we felt the need. Thank you, Marie. I want to thank the executive and the board and I need to find the right words to express it, but it has been a terrific team effort. It's been a harmonious board, one which has been unanimous in its decisions. At times we've had robust discussion about a few of the issues that have arisen, but there has been no rancour. We've always come to a consensus, and I can say that all members of the executive and the board have then gone out and supported whatever decision. Some of those were a couple of initiatives that I brought to the club, and which I'm very grateful for the support that I've received. So my thanks, and I'm going to name them. Vice President Elizabeth Clare, Vice President Stephen Haynes, our Honorary Secretary, in fact we've got two Honorary Secretaries, Andrea Cottier and now Andrea Carr as well. Because Andrea got married during the year and she wears one name for some purposes and the other for professional purposes. So Andrea, thank you very much for what you've done. To our Treasurer, Sylvia Footner, whom I've already acknowledged a bit earlier today, has done just an outstanding job in that role, and I might say under quite difficult circumstances at times. In acknowledging Sylvia, I also want to acknowledge past President Peter White, our Assistant Treasurer, who has stepped into into the breach just recently while Sylvia is away on holidays, and not more than that, who provides, I know, a constant source of counsel and support to Sylvia. Thank you, Peter. Also to President-elect Frank O'Neill, who is the other member of our executive and who has provided me with tremendous counsel. It's an interesting thing in Rotary because the President only has a tenure of 12 months. I say only, sometimes it feels a good deal longer than that. Other times it seems to flash by. But the point I want to make is that achieving continuity in the direction of the club and the management of the club is, I think, extremely important. And that's why I paid tribute earlier to immediate past President Brian Harris and before him to Tony. Last year, Brian and I conferred frequently on many aspects of the club's future and its management. Likewise, this year, Frank has unstintingly worked with me on the various things that we needed to do, and I've been very blessed to have a President-elect who has seen eye to eye with me on virtually everything. And I think that's not just him being polite to me, because Frank wouldn't do that. But we genuinely share the same view of life and of the future of this club. So thank you, Frank. Frank has also been Director of Fundraising, and we've had, as I'll reflect on in a moment, another successful year in fundraising, in some areas against the odds. The other directors, Barry Noble, Club Administration, Cam Pearce, Membership, Robert DePold, Community Service, Craig Hall, Vocational and Youth Service, and Giuliano Reck, International Service, have all done an outstanding job in their individual portfolios, and I thank them all. Special thanks should go to Giuliano Reck, because at my request he also took on the job of chairing the Speakers Program Committee. For a club of this size, which meets, as all Rotary clubs do, every week, finding a good and interesting speaker for every meeting is quite a daunting and demanding task, and I can say that from experience. And Giuliano, I think you will agree, has done an outstanding job. He's not here today, he's up in Cooperative, but I'd like you, if you would, to acknowledge what he has done for the great speakers program which we've enjoyed in the last 12 months. I also want to thank all of the chairs and deputy chairs of our many committees. I say many advisedly because if you count the chairs and the deputy chairs together, and you exclude the directors who chair some of them, there is still over 40 people who are involved in the leadership of the committees of this club. And that might sound like an enormous bureaucratic structure, and I suppose if you look at it on paper, it does appear that way. But in fact, there are so many things that are needed to be done and required to be done in club administration and community service that without the committees, frankly, it simply wouldn't happen. And so my thanks and the thanks of the board go to all of those chairs and deputy chairs for the outstanding job that they've done over the last 12 months. And I'd like you to thank them, please. My thanks too to the sergeants. Sergeant Major, as I like to call him, Simon Drew, has already named them, but I'll do so again. They're all, except for Elizabeth Clare, our Vice President, they're all past presidents of the club. Bobby Clark, Warren Wilson and Rod Ferrier. And they were chosen because of their experience and because I made with the support of the board, made quite a change to the responsibilities of that role in our weekly meetings, and I'll come back to that a little bit later on. So thank you to Simon for organising the Charges team and to all of the sergeants for their efforts through the year. Most importantly, though, I would like to simply thank the members of the club, without whose support, of course, the organisation wouldn't exist at all, and we would all be much the poorer. So my thanks to you all, and to the many members who are not here today. I think this is the time of the year, more than ever, when our members tend to depart for northern climes, and there are many of them either in Europe or in the northern parts of Australia. There are 10 people, for instance, who would have been here today, who are playing golf at the Rotary event in Queensland at the moment. And all 5 of those Rotarians and their partners are core supporters of the group. So my thanks go to everybody here today and to all of those who couldn't be here, simply for supporting the club as members. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank my wife Julie for supporting me through the year. We were discussing it just before we sat down, actually, and I suggested that she might have felt at times like a Rotary widow, and she assures me she doesn't. But we both have many activities which we undertake separately, just as we spend a lot of time together. But nonetheless, without her support, I wouldn't have been able to do this job for the last 12 months, so thank you, Darren. So the highlights of the year, and forgive me, what we have done over the last couple of months, what I have done, is ask each of the directors of the club to make a presentation at our weekly meetings, one at each of 6 meetings, to advise the club of all of the things that have been achieved in the 6 portfolios. I don't intend to revisit all of that. Would have made those presentations pointless. However, there are a few things which I will highlight. In club administration, we've done further work on the streamlining of club policies and procedures. We have also, under the leadership of Barry Noble, done considerable work on the branding of the club. I'd like to acknowledge too the work of the PR committee under Graham Bethune that has taken every opportunity to publicise that club, be it on radio or through the press. We've also done a lot of work on the preparations for the International Golfing Fellowship of Rotarians 2014 event, which will be held here in Adelaide next year, and which this club is sponsoring and managing. Our event manager, Rob Mottram, has done an outstanding job, and a great deal of work has been done this year on that to put us in a good place for the event in May next year. We've also, as Simon alluded to just a moment ago, done further work on the website, and more particularly perhaps on moving the reporting and communication between committees and between committees and the board by electronic means, which will bring us into line with modern business practice, and will also streamline and make easier the jobs of not only the directors but the committee chairs. Importantly too, we've done development on the format of our weekly bulletin, and you will see more of that shortly. In the community area, we have continued our tradition of significant fundraising. The Trailblazer led the way, at least in monetary terms, with, well, it raised a great deal more than this, but $67,000 was the sum of money which directly came back to this club to be allocated to our various the charities and organisations whom we support. And that is clearly a record and extremely well done. The Magic Show, which was organised again by David Mottram, and by the way, in the Trailblazer, I should acknowledge Steve Larkins and Barry Noble, but particularly Steve, for the fantastic job that they did in that. The Magic Show, which was again organised by David Mottram, and against considerable difficulty this year in terms of simply getting people to park with a bit of money. Against that difficulty, they still exceeded the budget and raised $45,000, which went straight into our community account. The Bulls and Bears, which Rob Falconer and Liz Clare and others are involved in organising, the numbers are not in yet. The event is not until this coming Saturday, but will produce a significant amount of money. And there are many other activities, such as the wood sales and others, which frankly too many to go through. But a great effort by all involved, and congratulations to Frank as the director concerned. In community service, both locally, internationally, our club has again been very active, and there are many more projects that I'm going to mention, but there are a few highlights. The Homeless Youth and Refugee Support Program, which was instituted under Ryan's year, continues. We've given specific support to the Salvation Army project at Ingle Farm, which serves a very needy community out there. We have given significant support to the Patch Theatre Company, which is literally a world-class company producing theatre for children, and which incidentally won against competition from 41 organisations representing 29 different countries, won the top award for a children's theatre production in Philadelphia in January of this year. And I'm very proud to say that our club, have given significant support for that. And President-elect Frank tells me that he and Margaret were so impressed with the presentation or the performance that they went to that he proposes to convince the board to continue that support next year. We've also supported many overseas projects, including the HEARS project. I'm going to mention two because of the direct involvement of members of this club. The HEARS project for the hearing impaired in Tonga, in which Dr. John Tomich and Brenton Wittenbury have been involved, and the Korogo Clean Water project in Papua New Guinea, which has been championed by our relatively new member Paul Greenaway. The blanket appeal was again successful, and I've already mentioned that this club, either through individual contributions or from the club itself, has donated nearly $8,000 to the Rotary Foundation. In the area of vocational and youth, we have continued our support for the Interact Club, which is based at Adelaide High. And these things I'm about to mention are all by way of support of young people. The Interact Club at Adelaide High, the Rotaract Club at the University of Adelaide, the RILA, RIPEN and RIDA programs, and I'm not going to burden you with those acronyms. Suffice it to say they are all projects which are in support of the young, and in particular in support of skills development and leadership development in the young. We've continued our financial support and our support in kind, that is to say volunteers, for the terrific Science and Engineering Challenge, which will again be on shortly. And of course we have our exchange student who is currently enjoying life in Toulouse, near Toulouse in southern France. In club activities, we had 60 attendees at the district conference in Bendigo in March of this year. I want to acknowledge past President Tony Robbins and his role in organising our attendance at that conference. And I might say, Murray, I'd like to pass on from myself and from the club congratulations on that conference. It was an outstanding success. The location, the choice of speakers, keynote speakers in particular, was quite outstanding. Congratulations. We also, speaking purely of fun now, we also had 50 attendees, or over 50 attendees at our club trip to Mildura only a month ago, and that was another outstanding success. And I'd like to acknowledge Channing Garon and past President Warren Wilson, who organised that event. Another outstanding success, thank you. Our monthly Our monthly fellowship meetings at Waverley House have continued under the guidance of a small team of very dedicated people led by past President Ollie Clark and Joan, past President Rod Ferrier and Patsy and Madeline Wiesner. And I want to draw members' attention to the fantastic effort that those five have made. I know there have been others who've supported them, and I thank them as well. But those five in particular have not only organised the event, but provided all the catering for the event every month. And it is with much gratitude that we acknowledge that. Yes. Our weekly meetings, which are after all the core activity of the club, I'd like to acknowledge Rob Mottram, Pete Salveson and the other members of that team, Tom Huff, for great efforts in organising our weekly events. They generally run very smoothly, and it doesn't just happen, it has to be organised. But my thanks to them, and I've already acknowledged Giuliano Rett and his team for a quite outstanding guest speaker program through the year. Finally, there are many other things, of course, but the last I want to mention today is the weekly bulletin, and to acknowledge Darcy Walsh and his team for the stewardship of that. And in particular, I'd like to acknowledge Bernadette Pope, who every week is the editor and publisher of that bulletin. And I'd like to ask Bernadette to come forward, please. Oh, she's not here. I see, taking place. I've got a spare bouquet of flowers then. Perhaps I'll option that as well. So then, objectives. What have we achieved? Well, I like to think firstly, and these are the things that I had in my mind as we set out. Firstly, to enhance the sense of club. Paul Harris founded a club, and of course, service is now central to Rotary, but essentially he founded a club which is there for its members. And I like to think that we've enhanced that with some of the changes that we've made to the order of the meetings, etc. Secondly, and part of that, to make our club more appealing to the younger potential members of Rotary. Thirdly, to strengthen the club's support for the arts, and I've already mentioned today our support for the Patch Theatre Company, for the ASO, and also a joint, which I haven't mentioned today, a potential new project jointly with ABC Local Radio in the visual arts, and you'll hear more of that in the coming Rotary year. And lastly, this issue came to me during the year rather than beforehand, but it's been an objective of mine and of President-elect Frank's to enhance active cooperation with the other Group 1 Adelaide clubs. And I'm delighted that they are represented here today by the presidents, either incoming or outgoing, of 4 of those 5 sister clubs. Sue Christensen, Bill Miles, Dean Sullivan, who's unfortunately ill today and couldn't get here, Richard Jarrett, Keith Pearson and Rick Albertini. We very much appreciate you being here today, and we look forward to working with you in the coming year. We now come to the point of the day, I suppose. I was delighted when the board, at that time chaired by President Brian Harris, appointed or nominated Frank O'Neill as the President for 2013-14. And I'd like Frank to come forward now, please. As he does so, I will say, I will just support what I've already said, and that is that Frank and I have worked together very closely throughout this year. There's very little that's happened. In fact, I dare say there's nothing that has happened of any consequence in which Frank hasn't been centrally involved. And I think that augurs well for the continuity and the future of the club. I will now read the presidential inductions charge, which I have already signed and which past President Ryan Ross will need to sign immediately after this function. President,
this is Cuba.
There's only one working. President-elect Frank O'Neill, you have been chosen by the members of the Rotary Club of Adelaide to be its president for the ensuing year. We are proud of the club's standing in Rotary and in the Adelaide community, and in choosing you as its president, the members believe its reputation will be enhanced in all respects. We look forward to your leadership and drive, and in turn, we pledge ourselves to assist you and support you in the task which lies ahead. We believe that with you as our president, our club will develop an even greater strength. Your appointment, which is the highest office in the power of the club to bestow, also recognises your past service to the club and to Rotary. It is now my privilege to induct you as president of the Rotary Club of Adelaide. Firstly, the change of office, which already has Frank's name on it as the president for the coming year. Secondly, a copy of the induction charge, which I'll ask you to get immediate past President Ryan to sign. Thirdly, your President's pin. Fantastic, isn't it?
We need a full-time dresser here. We have the opera.
Do you, Frank, accept this high office, and in doing so, pledge yourself to uphold the principles of the Rotary movement and to do your utmost to extend its influence of service and human understanding in our community?
I do.
President Frank, I extend to you hearty congratulations and sincere wishes from your fellow members and all assembled here today. Rotarians, your new president.
Now, immediate past President Chris, it's my turn to actually present you with your badge of past office. So, okay. Thanks, Chris. Your Excellency, Lord Mayor, District Governor Murray and Ken, District Governor-elect Barbara, Sir Eric and Lady Neil, President-elect Peter, Presidents, past Presidents, Presidents-elect, and all distinguished guests in this room. It's a great honour to have been selected to lead our club in the next year. I will try and build on the excellence of the past 90 presidents and their boards. They've laid the foundation of this organisation, and I will try and emulate the standards that they have set us. In this year, we will celebrate our 90th year in August. We were founded on the 24th of August, in 1923, and we will celebrate that at a luncheon here for all of Rotary in South Australia. We now have 100 clubs in this state, who can trace their charters back to the Rotary Club of Adelaide. And we can recognise what Rotary has done in our community on that occasion. Our incoming president of Rotary International, Ron Burton, has charged us to engage Rotary and change lives. There's an old African saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And I think we need to change communities in order to change the lives of especially vulnerable people in our communities. That will be our challenge throughout the next year. Next week, I'm scheduled to address you on future directions. I'm actually a fill-in for the chairman of the Economic Development Board, who's in the US. But we'll have a conversation about where we think we're going to go. Some of you will agree, some of you will have inputs, and some might have opposing views. But whatever happens, we will remain close friends at the end of that conversation. Because friendship is the basis of our club. It's on the friendship that we have with one another that we're able to achieve the outcomes for community service that we're committed to. Today, I want to actually acknowledge the contribution that Chris has made to our club. Chris, as engineer, brought to our club the skills you would expect from an engineer. He analyses, he plans, he assesses the risk, and he implements. Under his leadership, we continue to introduce efficiencies into our administration, and we continue to grow our fundraising. In the past year, in partnerships with other organisations, and I stress partnership, I think that is what will be important in the future. We partner with like organisations. We have raised $280,000 for investment in our communities, both locally and internationally. But as a musician and an artist, a painter, Chris has sensitised us to the need to invest in the arts in our community. And he's indicated what we've done, and the board has more or less embraced this concept, and we will continue it into the future. And through his underlying ideals to commitment, ideals to Rotary, he has begun to stretch out his hand of friendship to other Rotary clubs in our city. And today we have 6 clubs here recognising that friendship and attending this celebration lunch with us. Lord Mayor, we're actually talking to your department or Centre for Community Development. I think the clubs in Adelaide will come to see you and see how we can work with the city in developing a common agenda. But in the end, Chris, you couldn't do what you've done unless Julie supported you and made the inputs that she did to your life. And Julie, we want to thank you and recognise you for that support. Would you like to come up here? We have 2 bouquets of flowers. And we're not going to waste the other one. So Mari, would you like to come up here? And thank you for your leadership of the district. I hope you did understand me. My wife has always told me, stop thinking you're in front of 300 students and you're addressing them and shouting. In other words, throwing your voice. Stand back from the microphone, talk softly. I hope that I'll get some practice and maybe we'll tone it down. But now I think it's my turn to actually close this meeting. And I do so in the usual manner. Could you all stand? And we will finish the meeting by singing the first verse of the national anthem. The meeting is now closed, but could we just remain standing while the Governor leaves? Don't you want to leave? Thanks. I might actually introduce our board, which is the last item on the agenda, but I was aware the Governor is on the time schedule. So the board for next year, if you could just sit a little moment, I just cut it short a little bit so the Governor could leave. I'd like to introduce our President-elect, Peter Neal. Peter, if you would like to stand. Peter will also take on the responsibility of being the Director for Public Relations and Branding, so that we begin to focus on projecting more into the community. Our Vice President of Administration, David Egan, who's already made an enormous effort in getting our directory up to date. Cam Pearce, who will be the Director of Membership, is not here today. Immediate past President, Chris, will actually be the Director responsible for managing our risk as we manage the International Fellowship of Golf, when we expect 400 international visitors to come here. So thank you, Chris. Graham Bethune is touring in England. He's the Vice President Community Service. Juliana Rich is the Director International. Heidi Linford-Orban is the Director of Youth and Vocational Service. None of these people could be here today, but they have committed to doing their best endeavours. Director of Fundraising, Barry Noble. Director of Community Service, John Higginson. And I would just like to include two other people in this team who are not actually on the board, but Dick Johnson is the Membership Secretary. Dick, where are you? Can you stand? This is a critical office for us as we manage the growth of our membership. And also, I have put a lot of emphasis on training at all sorts of levels. So Simon Drew, would you like to stand, please? He's an officer without portfolio, but will actually take over quite a lot of the training, both of sergeants and our e-communications. Thank you, Simon, for accepting that. So this is our team for next year. I know they all have your support, and ultimately, I will blame Brian Harris for getting me into this position. And I will also blame Chris, because he said I agreed with everything he did. So I will say, well, it was Chris's idea. So thank you for your joining us today, and a safe journey home.